I had this sort of aha moment a couple of years ago about I'm not really a populist, I guess, by nature, but I had this moment where I saw that it had looked rigged for a long time with the rich perpetually getting richer and not only the poor, but the middle really not getting their fair share. And I think people, came to realize that, which is why we had part of the reason we had the political change the last few years.
In a casino, often you win because you're lucky.
Well, exactly. And I think the casino became the sort of governing trope of our economy instead of the factory floor or the office hive where everybody is more or less working together to accomplish something productive, as opposed to a casino where you go in and maybe, if you're very lucky, you win, but most people don't.
Well, we've been experiencing a series of bubbles. How long did the most recent one last?
Well, certainly the last dozen years in terms of real estate, but I argue in this book, and it's really about more than just economics. It's about sort of group psychology and culture and the way we think about getting something for nothing or working hard. I think beyond when a bubble did or didn't happen in real estate or finance or elsewhere, I think since the early 1980s, when the long modern bull market began, that has been an era, this extraordinary era where increasingly people thought there's no downside. Yeah, there are bumps in the road, but basically I'm just going to keep getting wealthier if I'm already wealthy.
Well, must there always be a bubble? Can't we just have a stable economy that just chugs along?
Well, we could become more like, say, Canada or Vermont. And I don't see any much chance of that happening. As I look at my reading of American history, is that we are a bubble and panic economy, and we're kind of bipolar in that way. We switch from wild and crazy sprees where we go out and dig for gold or invest in stocks or whatever it is, and then kaboom. As you look at history, American economic and political history, it cycles back and forth, sort of more or less usually a decade or a dozen years in this direction, then a decade or a dozen years in this direction. This last era, this 25-year era, was exceptionally long. And so we're in a position where a lot of people alive today don't know any other way of American life.
But despite the fact that it was long, there have been any number of industries that have been in trouble. The auto industry, media, healthcare. Have we been ignoring the signs?
I think we have. I think there has been a great kind of game of denial on all of our parts. You look back in the newspaper headlines in 1979 and 80, and they're already talking about the long-term crisis of Detroit. Certainly, as soon as there was an internet a dozen years ago, people saw the end of the game for much of media. But we never thought push would really, really come to shove, and now it has.
You've been writing a blog on the internet for Time magazine called Reset at time.com. Did this book grow out of that blog, and have you been issuing the kinds of warnings you felt that others should have been issuing?
Well, the book actually grew out of an idea that my friend Rick Stengel, the editor of Time, had back last winter at the grim depths of the crash, which became an essay and a cover story for Time, which then grew into the book and has now also become this blog. It's really not so much about warnings and issuing, aren't we terrible and didn't we get too lazy and full of magical thinking, all of which is true, but mostly I try to look at hopeful signs, as they say, the green shoots of how we are resetting, how the savings rate in this country has already zoomed up, for instance.